and John McCain were at least somewhat intelligent people and somewhat experienced enough to handle that kind of thing. So, at least always had that, even if I disagreed with them on so much else. The problem with Donald Trump is that he goes out there and he speaks and he says whatever he wants to hear, whatever his audience wants to hear, because he knows his audience isn't doing their due diligence and going and researching anything he's saying. They're just going to eat it up. And he knows that because the same audience is the audience that, it fills the pews in churches all over the country, very, very conservative churches that have this, pro-life mindset, but they're totally gun crazy, war crazy, death penalty crazy, and they hear Donald Trump saying stuff that they've said in conversations, and there you go. You've got this perfect storm of ignorance. I think it's more ignorance than hatred, personally, because I don't believe that the people that I've met and talked to that are Trump supporters are truly hateful people. I just believe they've been lied to and they've believed it. And I think that's the scary thing. I think we should all be asking our friends that live in other countries what they think about the current situation, because they have an outside perspective that, might actually shed some light on, what's going on here and what we're struggling with. And I'm definitely terrified. I did see that his earnings were much lower. What is it, 1.6 million to Hillary's 26 million or something?
42.
42. Oh yeah, even better. I think that's because post, the neck and neck primary race with Bernie at times, and all the heat that he was bringing on her, now that he's kind of been pushed out, whether you agree with it or not, he's been pushed out. Now the liberal citizens basically can kind of coalesce and unify and get together against Trump, which I think is what Hillary is banking on. She knows that most of Bernie's supporters that even say they won't vote for her actually probably will after they hear her and him in a debate, or they see him making more racist comments or more hateful comments about, anything and anyone really, and it's going to keep turning people off. So I think Hillary's in a really good position, but I'm definitely terrified of the, what is it, Idiocracy, the movie, the impending presidential race. We'll see what happens at the conventions, but I think it's going to be pretty nuts.
I want to ask you a question relating specifically with the views of both political candidates versus the LGBT community. So I just want to quote very briefly from the Human Rights Campaign, a posting on their website about Donald Trump. The point that I'm going for here is that during the recent Orlando tragedy, Trump made comments saying that he is the right candidate for the LGBT community, much to the shock and awe and horror of the community. So here's the quote from HRC. Donald Trump has been a consistent opponent of marriage equality. While he once said he supported protecting gays and lesbians from discrimination in the workplace by adding sexual orientation to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, more recently he expressed support for the so-called First Amendment Act, or FADA, which would expose LGBT people to more discrimination. So, and just to let you know, we had a guest try to come on Gay News Radio very recently that was a gay Republican who wanted to come on Gay News Radio and explain to our listeners why Donald Trump would be the right candidate for the LGBT community. And we said, okay, let's do a pre-interview, tell us some of your points and your reasoning. They said, no. We're just going live on the air, and they wouldn't answer any questions for us. So it was like, wait, so you just want us to go on the air, and you're going to tell us then, when you're on blast, the reason that Donald Trump is right. So I felt like there was nothing there, like it was all vapor, like they had no valid talking points, or they were still discussing, like, what are we going to say? What are we going to tell them? So the question for you, is Donald Trump the right candidate for the LGBT community, or is he pandering because he knows he needs our vote to even have a chance in November?
I don't know. I don't think there's a question there. Of course he's pandering. I mean, he's Donald Trump. Everything he does is pandering. He tries to convince you that everybody likes him, that he's good with everybody. But his own party can't stand him. His own party is mortified that he's the presumptive nominee
Yes.
at this point. And I'm still not convinced that they won't try to change the rules before the convention and find some way to oust him with a loophole and put somebody else in there. Though I think I'm fairly certain Hillary has it in the bag no matter who she goes against at this point because of all of the chaos. But no, he's absolutely not the right person for the LGBT community. He's also not the right person for the Caucasian community, for the conservative community, for the evangelical community, for the black
Latino.
community, the Asian community. He's the wrong person for every community. And I think that he makes that pretty clear just by tweeting what he thinks. So I'm definitely scared. I just hope that we pull our heads out of our rear ends and notice what's going on and really mobilize to stop him, because it's it's going to be bad if he slides into the election because of apathetic Democrats.
I want to ask you about the tragic events in Orlando. Clearly, you're an ally to the community. Timothy, when you first heard about the events at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, what was on your heart and mind when you heard about the tragedy?
I don't know if this will resonate with anybody else, but I was sad, but and obviously very devastated for the situation itself, but I was also unsurprised. I mean, what is it? There's been what they would consider a mass shooting every single day this year so far. Um, we're losing our minds, and we're taking taking a piece of paper for granted. I think the beautiful thing about the Constitution is that the Constitution is supposed to point you towards the people, and it's supposed to emphasize the protection of the people, and we're not allowing ourselves to be protected. President Obama said it best when he was confronted by the gentleman at the press conference, or it was the end of a speaking gig, Q&A. You know, several decades ago, the automotive industry was under fire because so many people were dying in accidents. So what did they do? They added seatbelts, they added safety, airbags, they added safety features. They required you to be licensed, to know how to drive, to prove you know how to drive, to get insurance in case you do get into an accident because you hit somebody, whether it be accidentally or somebody that doesn't know how to drive as well, hits you. And I don't understand why we can't just look at it that simply and say, hey, guns are the same thing. I'm also not surprised because I feel like radical Islam is very, very virulently against American culture, specifically LGBT American culture, and they believe it's spreading and causing problems for them the world around. So I obviously don't know personally if it was motivated by terror or just revenge, what the exact details were, but I do feel like we've addressed the hatred at our schools, we've addressed it in our communities, we've tried to address it worldwide, but apparently we haven't done as good of a job as we thought we did. And it's just a tragic situation. My heart goes out to everybody down there, everybody that was involved, the friends and family and the community as a whole. It's just absolutely terrible. But like I said, I wasn't surprised because nothing's being done, and I feel bad for President Obama every time he has to go out there and make a statement because he's just beating a dead horse. He's saying the same thing over and over and over again, and nobody's doing anything about it. And the reason they're not doing anything about it is because the gun lobby is powerful and has a lot of money, just like the tobacco lobby, just like any of the lobbies, really. One
Yes.
of the reasons I was very excited about Bernie Sanders as a campaign for a while was because of the fact that he wasn't as friendly towards lobbyists, and I thought that's probably a good thing. Unfortunately, um, I still believe it's a very bad thing, but if Hillary's going to have to use it to beat Donald, then so be it. Hopefully she'll consider changing that stuff later on. But yeah, I
As
mean,
a
overall, it's
Sanders
just an absolutely
supporter,
tragic situation.
yeah. As a Sanders supporter, are you also kind of wondering where things stand with Senator Sanders? I know that he'd made a statement today, a surprising statement that came through that said, "It looks like I'm not going to be the presumptive Democratic nominee," and that was the first that anyone had actually heard him say that. But that's kind of a given at this point. But he has pledged to work with Hillary in some capacity to beat Trump, but we don't know the exact details. Is it going to be a bitter pill to swallow for the Bernie Sanders supporters that are Bernie or bust, that are not in the Hillary camp, to have Bernie Sanders campaign for Hillary Clinton? I know a lot of people have spoken with us and are very adamant that they would either sit out the election, write in Mickey Mouse, or do anything else but vote for Hillary Clinton. But look at the terrifying alternative of Donald Trump. You have two
Oh
choices
yeah,
in
and
this election.
that's why I think there's no way that it's a reasonable or rational thing to be Bernie or bust, because are you really going to be okay with Donald Trump coming in and tearing everything down, turning the White House into the Trump White House? I mean, it's an honor thing. One of my favorite TV shows, and I always pull it, especially during election season, into any interview I'm on, is because it's so amazing and how relevant it still is even 10 years after the series finale. And I think that show perfectly illustrates the fact that the biggest hindrance to progress is apathy. And and I think that when you're Bernie or bust, and you have a McCain or even a Romney as an opponent, even if you disagree with them, like, to an extent, you can say, hey, well, they've gotten to the point they're at for different reasons. The Dawn got on because
traditional polls
Fox
traditional
News
polls show us that if there's low turnout, the Republicans do very well in a low voter turnout, and Democrats do very well when the numbers come out. So if the Bernie or bust people sit it out, it goes in the Republicans' favor. And then we're not just speaking Donald Trump, but we're talking up and down the state-by-state ballots, too.
Yep.
We're talking about, either taking or losing control of the Congress.
Yeah, and that's the more important thing I would challenge Bernie supporters to really look at. One of the things that there's a situation in the season 6 of The West Wing where the new candidate running for president is basically being told by the party leadership and everybody that he has to drop out because it's a deadlock convention, and one of the main characters is talking to another main character, and he's saying, listen, I know it's hard. They get addicted to the crowds. They get addicted to the enthusiasm, to the affirmation. It's everything they've always wanted while they've been in office in other positions, but have never really gotten. I kind of feel like Bernie might be, taking just one too many curtain calls. And I think that Elizabeth Warren is probably, if he wants to support Hillary, he needs to mediate a conversation between Elizabeth Warren and Hillary, or not mediate per se, because they, obviously Warren endorsed Hillary, but he needs to get them together and give, Elizabeth his blessing to go join the ticket and go balls to the wall for Hillary. I think that would do a lot to help his supporters jump on board. But either way, I don't honestly think it's going to be a close election if people vote. And you said when there are higher numbers, blue typically wins out. But it's more so typically when women vote that blue ends up winning, because the Democratic Party is typically it's the mommy daddy switcheroo that we keep going through every few
So here's the
president.
twist, though. Here's the twist, and I will say it on air. I'm a Hillary Clinton supporter.